by the Central Adoption Research Agency for both in-country and inter-country adoption. The same was challenged before the Honorable Supreme Court, saying that it is an infringement of the personal laws of certain parties. In yet another landmark judgment in the field of adoption, the Honorable Supreme Court in Shabnam Azmi versus Union of India and others, Shabnam Azmi versus Union of India, Shabnam Azmi versus Union of India and others, the Supreme Court held that the JJ Act 2006 amendment is a small stepping stone in reaching the goal enshrined under Article 44 of the Constitution of India. The Supreme Court also alerted the persons who are aggrieved by the amendment that this is an act which is something which is akin to the Special Marriage Act. Only those persons who feel that they need to adopt a child need approach the court. The others need not approach the court to adopt a child. So therefore, it cannot be said to be infringing the personal laws of any person. Something like the Special Marriage Act, because two persons of different religions can get married under the Special Marriage Act, and the same is the case of the Juvenile Justice Amending Act. Now the problem that we face, till then we were having only lack of legislation. Now after the Amendment Act and the guidelines came, now we started facing a bigger problem, which we normally say it became confusion confounded with the more legislations in force. So far as the Hindus are concerned, if you go through the Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act, there is Section 5 which is there. Section 5 says, any adoption done shall only be under the provisions of the Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act, and any adoption done in violation of Section 5 is void. So therefore, the Juvenile Justice Act, though it caters to the needs of all sects of the community or all persons belonging to all religions, but the problem faced by the persons governed by AMA, the Hindu Adoption Act, was that they had to resort to the AMA to get a child adopted. So far as the persons not governed by AMA, that is the persons belonging to the Christian and Muslim communities, there was no statutory law. So they had to be satisfied of just getting appointed as legal guardians. Now, at this point of time, as you all may remember, the Honorable High Court came out with a judgment that is in 1999 1 KLT 292, Phillips Alfred Malvin versus Gonsalves. Justice Sadish Nayan would know about it because it was his senior who was the amicus curiae in the matter. Erstwhile Justice Giri and senior advocate Giri now. He was the one who had argued the matter, and we had actually shared certain common thoughts on this matter. And the Honorable High Court went on to hold that canon law does not prohibit adoption within the country, and Christians can also be permitted to adopt. But unfortunately, this decision did not live long, because the Honorable Supreme Court reversed the decision and said that it is not permissible, because unless there is a statutory law, you cannot permit adoption, because it is something which is a judgment in rem and applicable to the whole world, for which you have a statutory backing. Though the canon law, which is purely for ecclesiastical needs, is there, it does not give a statutory backing, so the decision is wrong. Now, then later, another division bench of the Honorable High Court held in 2005 3 KLT, this is not there in the slide, 2005 3 KLT 57 in Maxine George versus IOC, the Honorable Supreme Court held that unless there is a statutory law, there cannot be an adoption. This was something in tune with the Supreme Court decision reversing Philip Alfred Malvin. Now, another decision which would is worth reading, though may not be applicable at the present stage, but something which is worth reading for all of you is slide. This is a decision which I personally feel that all judges should read. That is 2000 Volume 2 DMC 292, Manuel Theodoro D'Souza. This was a decision rendered by Justice Rivello of the Bombay High Court. He went on to hold that the courts exercising the parents' patria jurisdiction, even though there are no statutory guidelines, following the decisions starting from Menaga Gandhi to Vaishaga's case and Geeta Ariyaran, all the decisions have been rendered, have been relied on in the decision, that's why I said it's worth reading. And the Bombay High Court went on to hold that deals any statutory provision if the court exercises the parents' patria jurisdiction, can always declare a prospective adoptive couple as the adoptive parents, which is a judgment in rem. And despite the lack of statutory backing, the court is empowered to do so. And it went on to hold further that in view of Article 225 of the Constitution of India, this decision is applicable to all the states in the country, though it is only a persuasive precedent. This decision has also now actually become obsolete due to the provisions of the JJ Act 2015. Now, the problem, as I earlier said, we had to, for the Hindus in the country, had to follow a three-tier system. That is, first get themselves appointed as the legal guardians of the child, and then approach the district court, because if you all know, under the Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act, Section 9(4), kindly go through Section 9(4). A guardian to take a child in adoption has to obtain previous permission of the court. Section 9(4) of the Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act. So therefore, illegitimate or a desert or a abandoned or relinquished child in an institution who was to be placed in adoption to a Hindu family, the parents had to approach, had to first get themselves appointed as a legal guardian. Now the problem that we faced in the system was that guardianship was covered under the Family Courts Act. Whereas under the Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act, the court was only the district court. Though a petition was filed before the Honorable High Court of Kerala in Vinod Krishnan versus Missionaries of Charity. Excuse me. This is 1997 2 KLT 863, Vinod Krishnan versus Missionaries of Charity. Excuse, there's a small problem, technical problem this week. In the said decision, Vinod Krishnan versus Missionaries of Charity, the Division Bench of the Honorable High Court went on to hold that the jurisdiction of the family court comes within the 7 pigeonholes under section explanation 7. You cannot enlarge the jurisdiction conferred under clause 7(1)(g), that is guardianship, custody and access. The word used under section 9(4) is permission to adopt. So therefore, the family courts do not have the jurisdiction to entertain a petition under section 9(4) of AMA. Now, after the decision came into force, the problem that was faced, the difficulties that was faced was, first you have to get yourself appointed under the Guardian and Wards Act before the district court, and after getting yourself appointed as the guardian under the district court, from the family court, you then file a petition seeking permission under AMA 9(4) before the district court. So it became a two-tier procedure. Now, there is a subtle difference here which should come to your mind, because the people all commonly mistake that adoption is granted by the court. At present, yes, but earlier, adoption is done by giving and taking. That is the concept under the AMA Act. A child has to be given by the guardian, by the parent, biological parent, to the adoptive parent. And to evidence the adoption, you register an adoption deed. To evidence the adoption as contemplated under the Act, if you see the provision, that is section 16 says, whenever a document registered under any law for the time being in force is produced before any court, purporting to record an adoption made and is signed by the persons giving the person taking the child in adoption, the court shall presume that the adoption has been made in compliance with the provisions of this Act, unless and until it is disproved. So, therefore, by the court granting permission to adopt the child does not complete the adoption. Subsequent to that, the parents have to give and take the child. Now, so far as a institutional child was concerned, the guardian, after getting adopted, getting himself appointed as a guardian, by invoking section 9(4), gave the child in adoption to himself with the previous permission of the court. After getting this permission, he executes the adoption deed. This was a three-tier system that was followed. Now, so far as the persons who were not governed by AMA, they had to be consoled with only the guardianship order, that is being appointed as the legal guardian. But the problem that was faced was the child does not get the inheritance or intestate succession rights over the properties of the child, of the parents. The only way that we could get over, the guidelines contemplated that such persons not governed by the AMA had to execute a will in favor of the child. So therefore, the child, on the death of the adoptive, of the guardian, by way of testimonial succession, gets the inheritance of the properties. Now, in the meantime, after the 2006 guidelines came into force, then the government of Kerala came out with a regulation, with the Kerala rules. The rules said court, but it did not define the court. Then a petition was filed before the Juvenile Welfare Board, because the word used was board. Then the Honorable High Court in 1997 2 KLT, no sorry, yes, in 2008 1 KLT page 1000, Andrew Mendes versus State of Kerala. In this decision, the High Court of Kerala went on to hold that the court under the Kerala rules means the district court and not the family court, because the family court cannot be conferred with the jurisdiction following the decision in Vinod Krishna's case, saying that under the pigeonholes of section 7(1)(g), it is only guardianship, custody and access, and there is no word permission to adopt or adopt. So therefore, it is the district court which has been conferred with the jurisdiction. Now this was the state of affairs. Finally, to the solace of the stakeholders and the children in particular, the reality of having a unified legislation came into force in the year 2015. That is the Juvenile Justice Care and Protection of Children's Act 2015. Kindly take the act. If you see, the Parliament, for the first time, under Section 2.2 of the Act, the 2015 Act, defined the word adoption. Section 2.2. Adoption means the process through which an adopted child is permanently settled from his biological parents and becomes the lawful child of his adoptive parents with all rights, privileges and responsibilities that are attached to a biological child. Then 2.3. Adoption regulation means the regulations framed by the authority and notified by the central government in respect of adoption. That is how the genesis of the Parliament gave birth to the Adoption Regulations 2015, by which the entire adoptions in the country is governed now. In the JJ Act 2015, I just take you through some of the relevant provisions which may be necessary. What is an authorized foreign adoption agency is given in section 2.6. 2.7 defines the word authority, which means the Central Adoption Resource Agency. Then, what is the best interest of the child is given in 2.9. That means for any decision taken regarding the child to ensure fulfillment of his basic rights and needs, identity, social well-being, physical, emotional and intellectual development. Then 12. Child means a child who has not completed the age of 18 years. Also, what is a child care institution? Here is the jurisdiction of the court. Section 223, which is important for you all because this is the question which will have to be decided. Court means a civil court which has jurisdiction in the matter of adoption and guardianship and may include the district court, family court and civil court, city civil court. Now here you may ask me, how does this confer jurisdiction on the family courts? If you see, under section 7 second part, that is how a family court can be conferred with jurisdiction. If you go through Vinod Krishnan's decision, the High Court has remarked about this. That is how this jurisdiction has been conferred. Section 7.2b. Section 7.2b. That is, subject to the provisions is that a family court shall, I am reading clause 1, have all and exercise all the jurisdiction exercisable by any district court or any subordinate civil court under any law for the time being enforced in respect of suits and proceedings of the nature referred to in the explanation. And then it comes to the 7 pigeonholes, and then it says about chapter 9 of CRPC and B. Such other jurisdiction as may be conferred on it by any other enactment. So, the Parliament has got the power through an independent enactment to confer jurisdiction on the family court. An example that I would give you is the Domestic Violence Act. The Parliament said that in a pending civil proceedings, even before a family court, you can file an application in a pending civil proceedings before the family court under the DV Act, which has been upheld by the Honorable High Court in various decisions. So similarly, by way of section 7.2b, the Parliament conferred jurisdiction on the family court by virtue of 223 to include the family court as the court under which an adoption matter can be placed. Now this had created a confusion in the state, and the family court in fact said, in fact our director had in the morning, Babu had also told me about this, how can you confer jurisdiction? This matter was filed before the family court. Family court said, see, the 7.1g does not say, Vinod Krishna also does not say. But the Honorable High Court, in a matter dealt by Justice Ashok Bhushan, went on to hold, it is not a reported decision, went on to hold that in view of the conferment of jurisdiction by section 223 on the family courts and by 7.2b, family courts have jurisdiction. There is a circular of the Honorable High Court on this matter saying that family courts are specialized adoption courts. I have the circular with me, I will give it to the director who will circulate it among you all. It must be in the family courts because as my memory is correct, it was circulated to all family courts by the Honorable High Court after the decision came into force because it is a matter concerning jurisdiction. Then, what is inter-country adoption is also defined in the Act, and what is a surrendered child, what is a specialized agency, and then the decisions, the best interest of the child that has to be considered by the court while appointing a person as an adoptive parent. Coming to chapter 8, which deals with rehabilitation and social reintegration of the children. Adoption is the second resort, that is to restoration of the child. After the parents, it's the adoptive parents which is given priority. Finally, coming to the Act, chapter 8 deals with adoption, which is relevant for you all because the section 56 says, adoption shall be resorted to for ensuring right to family for orphan, abandoned and surrendered children as per the provisions of this Act, the rules made thereunder and the adoption regulations framed by the authority. 2. Adoption of the child from a relative by another relative, irrespective of religion, can be made as per the provisions of this Act and the adoption regulations framed by the authority. This is in a way to get over Anauka's decision. This was incorporated in this decision, in this subsection. Next, nothing in this Act shall apply to adoption of children under the provisions of the Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act. Here there is a catch because section 5 of the Hindu Adoption Act said that any adoption made in contravention of the AMA is void. So therefore, in order to save that, this particular provision was there, which I will deal with it later because we had an opportunity in a division which consists of me and Justice Arila. We had an opportunity to deal with this subject, and we went on to hold that both the enactments are independent and can be separately dealt with. Those who want to adopt a child from an institution have to resort to the JJ Act, and those who want to adopt a child from within the family can resort to the AMA. So that is how we have clarified. I will give you the citation. Then the eligibility criteria of how the families can, the eligibility of the adoptive parents, the procedure under which the adoption has to be made is given in section 58. Section 58. Then the procedure for inter-country adoption is given. You have to go through these provisions because it is there, and this is the Magna Carta in which the courts have to deal with the situation. So I am not taking you threadbare through each of the provisions, but the jurisdiction has been conferred on the family court, and the eligibility criteria and the procedure under which you have to do it is also there. Most important aspect is section 63, the effect of the adoption. This is for the first time that we have got a legislation other than from the Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act, which is analogous provision to section 12. The legislature has defined the effect of adoption. It says, the child in respect of whom an adoption order is issued by the court shall become the child of the adoptive parents, and the adoptive parents shall become the parents of the child, as if the child had been born to the adoptive parents for all purposes, including intestacy, with effect from the date on which adoption order takes effect, and on from such date all the ties of the child in the family of his or her birth shall stand severed and replaced by those created by the adoption order in the adoptive family. So this was the first time, and what is an adoption and what is the validity of an adoption, what is the effect of the adoption was defined. And the life of the Central Adoption Resource Agency, State Adoption Resource Agency, etc. have all been given in the Act itself. Then the Act also provided the central government to make model rules. And this was something which was beyond the capacity of the central government, however it still survives. It said state governments can, as the authority to formulate rules, but it has to be in consonance with the model rules formulated by the central government. Anyway, it is still in the statute book, nobody has challenged it. So therefore, we have the model rules which is there, and none of the states have formulated or framed state rules. Then in the model rules, if you go by rule 45, rule 45 is the only rule which relates to courts. It said, the procedure before the court, rule 45. The procedure for obtaining an adoption order from the court concerned would be provided in the adoption regulations. 45(2). Court, for the purpose of an application for an adoption order, shall not be bound by the procedure laid down in the Code of Criminal Civil Procedure, Evidence Act, the procedure as laid down in the JJ Act, and adoption regulations shall be followed. So therefore there is a deviation, like in the Family Codes Act section 14. The court said only the CPC as well as Evidence Act is not applicable. It is the JJ Act and the adoption regulations that is govern the procedure before the court. Then we have the regulations that came into force, which is in fact the guidelines of Lakshmikant Pandey 1 to 4 have been embedded absolutely into the adoption regulations 2017. Only thing, the guidelines were not all that exhaustive, but in the adoption regulations 2017 you find very exhaustive, detailed procedure to be followed. What is in-country adoption, what is inter-country adoption, what is the Hague Convention, what is adoption, even the fees to be paid to the lawyer has also been stipulated in the regulation. This is in a way envisioned only for the purpose of avoiding all sorts of malpractices which were existent before. And how a child is to be declared legally free for adoption, how a child is to be relinquished by the parents, etc., have all been defined under regulation 2. Then the eligibility criteria is also there. This was also a matter of challenge before the Honorable High Court, and the High Court has in fact upheld the eligibility criteria. Now I'll pause here for a moment because most of you may have a doubt. Now whether it's the need of the family which is concerned or whether it's the interest of the child. Obviously all of you know that so far as courts exercising its powers to appoint a person as an adoptive parent or as a legal guardian is only concerned about the paramount welfare and the best interest of the child. Rest is all irrelevant or immaterial or secondary, because we are not concerned about the rights of the adoptive parents or the guardians. So therefore the Parliament in its wisdom formulated the regulation as stipulated the age criteria. The age criteria, for example, if you go through regulation 5, you can find that for children up to 4 years, the Parliament has fixed the joint age of the couple, if it is a couple, as 90 years, and if it is a single parent, say a single father or a single mother, who is coming forward to adopt the child, is 45 years. Children above 4 years and 8 years, it is 100 years joint age and 50 years single age. Similarly, above 8 years up to 18 years, 110 years is the composite age and 55 years is the single age. This was a subject matter of challenge. I will give you the citation. The Honorable High Court said the paramount welfare of the child has to be looked into, and it is for this purpose that this particular criteria has been incorporated. Now the procedure relating to adoption is not concerning you all. That is all on the administrative side to be followed by the institutions. Ultimately, when they come with all the documents, all that you have to presume is it has been done in accordance with the procedure, especially when the state gives the clearance. In case of in-country adoption, it is the State Adoption Resource Agency, which we call as SARA, which issues the clearance. And in case of inter-country adoption, it is the central government, that is the Central Adoption Resource Agency, the authority, which gives its NOC. It is with that NOC only you can file a petition before the family court for an adoption order. That you have to keep in mind. The cardinal document which you have to verify in an inter-country adoption is the no objection certificate by the central authority, which is a mandatory requirement. So it will be presumed if the NOC from the CARA is issued, that the parents have gone through the entire